As luck would have it, the very engine for the job had just come back into service. So often in steam days, when a Gresley Pacific failed, its train would be taken over by one of his mixed traffic engines of the V2 class. And now the only survivor, the National Railway Museum's Green Arrow, was back from heavy surgery, as the museum's curator of operations described.
Well, quite an extensive boiler overhaul. The outer wrapper of the firebox was renewed. The bottom 9 inches of it was renewed throughout. Really extensive repair, stay renewal, and foundation ring rivets all replaced, etc. Very, very extensive overhaul. And we had troubles initially when the boiler was first steamed with leaking stays and etc. Most of that work has largely cleared up now.
The Great Western Express layout, as on King Edward I, was the 460 wheel arrangement. Gresley's 3-cylinder V2 was a very different machine in almost every respect.
Yes, the engine's a 262 Prairie type wheel arrangement, and with the trailing truck, a very odd arrangement of trailing truck, single axle at the back of the loco. It takes the weight of the back of the firebox and relieves. The V2 is quite a heavy engine for a 6-coupled engine, and so it takes some of the back of the weight of the firebox from the trailing coupled axle.
V2s never reached Devon, where the Kings had reigned supreme with their ability to dig in on the banks.
The idea was with the 460s that with the train hanging back on the banks, then most of the weight was the Dijon weight. But as I say, you've still got very heavy sort of 22-ton axle load on the V2, and she's very sure-footed.
In 24 hours' time, Green Arrow would be making railway history. For now, though, she was living in the lion's den, surrounded by GWR machinery. Ray Towell was confident Green Arrow would acquit herself well. Back in the 30s, Gresley had designed her to be able to tackle almost anything.
I think Gresley at that time had inherited a lot of old pre-group freight engines and to some extent mixed traffic engines. He wanted a good, solid, modern engine to his own design that would do virtually any passenger work and any goods work, especially fitted freight work, a lot of fitted van trains, that sort of thing. He built an engine that would, as I say, support the Pacifics with their passenger work in case of their non-availability, and one of these engines always laid over at Peterborough North in case anything coming from King's Cross, and I've seen it happen several times in my boyhood. One of these engines would step straight in. One of the engines that failed was Madge Wildfire. What a marvellous name that was. And so the engine you're looking at here, the firebox is the same as the A4, like Mallard to Nigel Gresley, the same as the A3, which is like Flying Scotsman, but of course with a smaller boiler, a shorter boiler. So the steaming capacity and the heat transfer is very good indeed. A smaller wheel, better adhesion with big heavy trains, and still capable of running to 80 miles an hour and so.
As the hours ticked away, the support crew from the National Railway Museum were hard at work on the engine.
Today we've been over the pit, all the axle boxes have been checked, lubrication to every mechanical point of the 2-to-1 gear, some grease points, some oil points. The tender's been filled with water. We're in the process of setting up the coaling for this afternoon.
By the end of the day, Green Arrow was ready. All they needed now was some decent weather. But what the Met men were promising was a violent storm. The next morning, Devon was beginning to feel the power of a deep depression brewing in the southwest approaches. Didcot was in a different world, blue skies and fluffy clouds. It looked like any other lovely Easter day as the duty locomotive moved off shed. The Great Western Society's 042 tank engine was fresh from overhaul itself and, like Green Arrow, looked resplendent in the spring sunshine. It was time to hand the engine over to the EWS footplate crew. The traction inspector for the whole trip was the celebrated Bristol driver Brian Dudley Ward, who started out on Eastern Region steam and was relishing taking the first V2 to the West Country. The train would cover 205 miles in 7 hours, limited to 60 miles an hour because Green Arrow wasn't carrying AWS equipment. There'd be water stops at Newbury and Frome, and at Exeter, where they'd also replenish the coal. The driver and fireman, Dave Davis and Chris Greystone from Old Oak Common, would be relieved at Westbury by Bristol men. They were 2 minutes and 40 seconds late leaving, but were about to make a sprightly getaway, and the 388-ton train would be moving at a mile a minute within 5 miles.
How you doing?
Toro. As the train approached its first water stop, which would be at Newbury Racecourse, nobody, it seemed, had noticed that something was missing. The train was supposed to be carrying a Mayflower headboard, celebrating the fact that its destination was the point of departure for the ship that carried the Pilgrim Fathers. But the missing headboard wasn't the most pressing problem facing the train crew as they prepared to apply the brakes at Thatcham, 3 miles before Newbury. Their dilemma, as they eased through the racecourse station, was where to stop. Somewhere round here was a hydrant. In fact, it's marked by the blue plastic markers, but not surprisingly they've run right past it, for the markers are all but invisible from the footplate. Only a few line-side photographers were able to record what happened next. The train was forced to set back, and later on Ray Towell would realise that the headboard was still in the support coach. The actual hydrant is in a car park on the edge of the racecourse. The locomotive still has a good 100 metres to go before it reaches the right spot. This is an example of what happens when line-side vegetation is allowed to reach jungle proportions. In fact, the support crew would find themselves blazing a trail up the bank for the water hose. The water stop was booked for 35 minutes, so there was plenty of time for the footplate crew to complete their needle-in-a-haystack shunt and still be away in time. The only real repercussion of this incident was that, unforgivably, the guard's cup of tea was late.
Is that kettle boiling yet?
Oh, is that?
Thank you very much, sir.
It's hot. There's not a lot of
Right,
water in
thanks.
it.
Headboard in position, and now hiding shyly behind a smokescreen, Green Arrow set off again for the short stroll to Newbury Station, where there was a booked 2-minute stop. For the record, after some smart work at the water stop, they eased away from Newbury a whole 17 seconds late. Ahead of them, the famous stretch past Crofton Pumping Station, which sits above the lovely Kennet and Avon Canal. The photographers wait for Green Arrow, the Sunday mountain bikers scurry past, and on the canal itself, a single mallard. 50 years on, the LNER is coming back in style. Savernake summit. Green Arrow tops the 1 in 106 bank at precisely the 60-mile-an-hour permitted maximum. The 3-cylinder roar is music to Ray Towell's ears. His engineers, men like Rodney Litton and Dave Campy, have nursed the big engine back to health, and Savernake has demonstrated the integrity of their work.
Well, we were climbing the Savernake summit, which is quite a climb, borders the Kennet-Navan Canal, beautiful run up there, sweeping grades, and we topped the summit something like 50 miles an hour, I would say, going really well.
He strikes me he was giving it some welly up the front.
Yes, well, you need to keep section times, and so he was working the locomotive commensurate to the road.
You know, one thing that amazes me is looking out the window, there's hardly a field, hardly a tree, hardly a road, where there isn't someone with a camera. It's really a magnet, isn't it?
Oh, it is indeed, a great attraction. I mean, the railway itself, long gradients, sweeping curves, beautiful countryside. What more can you ask? Perhaps a little sun.
Well, so far it's going very well. We couldn't have wished for anything better. Plenty of steam, you can hear the safety valve blowing. Speed's all right, we're on time. Everything at present is rosy.
Well, I've just been down to see Rodney, who was the leading fitter on the job, and I've just hugged him. So there we are. And I was virtually in tears coming over the top of Savernake in fine style. It's down to Rodney, Dave Campy, as you say, the many volunteers who work and strive to keep the engine in the fit state it is.
A crew change. Jeff Ewan's on the shovel, Colin Parry driving. For Colin, there's a steep and amusing learning curve as he gets to grips with Green Arrow for the first time, to the obvious delight of his mates.
Trying to get this lever down in the forward position. Will you run away now? You give us all right then, let's go away. Here we go, eh, gentlemen.
Ahead of them, after stops at Frome and Taunton, is the 15-mile, ever-steepening climb that culminates in Whiteball's 1 in 80.
Now we're on our way, gentlemen.
By the time they get to Exeter, they'll have been travelling for 4.5 hours. The fire will be very dirty. It'll need completely rebuilding in just 60 minutes.
Well, you go to a good trip.
Leaving Castle Carey, the train is 4 minutes ahead of schedule and running easily, so the traction inspector can turn his attention to cleaning the footplate and laying the coal dust. For these long-serving enginemen, it's just like old times, and though it may be a third of a century since the demise of steam, the skills are never forgotten. But the EWS men aren't the only people on the footplate who can remember those days. The support crew member on this section, Jim Sarney, fired V2s out of Marylebone in the 60s.
It's something that I never ever thought I would do again. I mean, when steam went off the railways, we all thought that was it. And I brought a steam road locomotive because I thought I must get steam from somewhere. And at that time, no one, I don't think, on BR ever thought that steam would return, and they really didn't. And today, it's special for me because Green Arrow on the front is an engine which I was very familiar with when they were working for a living on the railways. And I've got many fond memories of the Green Arrows and the A3s working from out of Marylebone, of course, to Nottingham and Sheffield and Manchester. And of course, we were very lucky because it was a joint line. It meant that we got Great Western engines and LNER engines and LMS engines, so it was a nice piece of railway to be associated with.
Green Arrow is steaming really well, but while Colin Parry relaxes into the job, the fireman and traction inspector are thinking about the boiler demands ahead. They're approaching Wellington, where City of Truro came the other way, doing a ton 100 years ago. In the down direction, though, it's a different matter, and the gradient will rob Green Arrow of 20 miles an hour in just 3 miles, dipping to a minimum of 36 miles an hour at Whiteball Summit. A glance at the photographers in the fields confirms that Green Arrow is about to confront the first of her 3 great labours. Green Arrow had proved sure-footed so far, and the enginemen were becoming increasingly confident about their new mount. Colin Parry was later to say that the V2 felt at least as capable at these speeds as the longer-legged A4s. Now it's downhill all the way to Exeter, and this is their chance to have a good look at the fire. And the traction inspector is already working away with the irons. This is the section where the railway runs alongside the M5 motorway for several miles near Tiverton. A wave to the motorists from Colin Parry, but everyone else is too busy to pay much attention. One driver has rigged up a video camera on the back seat, but rail safety rather than road safety is their concern, and seeing people on the trackside, let alone without high visibility vests, always puts the engine men on edge. On a happier note, for Jeff Ewins there are a few moments to recover before the brakes go on for Exeter. There's another rail tour in the station which causes the crew a few moments' mirth as they bring Green Arrow down to walking pace. They don't yet know that the coal delivery they're supposed to rendezvous with can't get within 100 yards of the engine, so several tons of coal will have to be humped manually to the tender, and that will put the rest of the trip in jeopardy. Green Arrow's real battle is still to be fought, though for now they have the pleasure of coming to a standstill precisely 8 seconds early.